Hi everybody, in this video I'm going to be going through the notes for lesson 8.10 and today's idea is how do we find slopes but from tables. So in a table there's going to be a left side and there's going to be a right side. When we want to find the slope, what we're going to do is look at the right side and look at the left side patterns separately. Then we're going to make a slope fraction, and this is the part that's tricky. The right side pattern, which is the Y pattern, goes on the top, and the left side pattern, which is the X pattern, goes on the bottom. Now I say that this is tricky because when you look at your table, the X side pattern is first, but it's actually that pattern that goes on the bottom. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. So let's find the pattern first. On the left side of the table, if I look at how do I go from -10 to -2 and -2 to +6 and +6 to 14, I can see that my pattern is +8. On the right side, if I ask myself, what is the pattern? How do I go from -15 to -5, -5 to +5, 5 to 15? The pattern is +10. So now I'm going to make my slope fraction. On the top of my slope fraction, I'm going to put the Y pattern on the top. And I'm going to put the X pattern on the bottom. The Y pattern in this case is 10, and the X pattern in this case is 8. So what I'm going to do next is put that fraction into my calculator and let the calculator simplify for me. When I do that, I should get 5/4, and that's my slope. Now, since my slope is positive, one thing I do want you to know is that that has a vocabulary word, increasing. Increasing is the word for positive slopes. Decreasing is the word for negative. 0 goes with constant, and does not exist goes with undefined. That's not something you're going to necessarily be tested on, but those should be words that you've heard before you go to math or math 2. All right, let's check out the following tables. Again, my strategy would be always start by getting the patterns first. So to go from 5 to 9 to 13, the pattern is +4. To go from 20 to 18 to 16, the pattern is -2. Then I would focus on my fraction. My Y pattern is going to be on the top, and my X pattern is going to be on the bottom. So in this problem, it would be -2 divided by 4. And if I enter that into my calculator, it should tell me that my slope fraction is -1/2. Again, I would focus on the patterns. -3 to -1, -1 to +1, that's a +2 pattern. 40 to 45, 45 to 50, that's a +5 pattern. In my slope fraction, the Y pattern should go on the top, so that's 5. And the X pattern should go on the bottom, so that's 2. If I type that into my calculator, it actually does not simplify because it's already a simplified fraction. And so that would be my final answer. We can even do this when there's only 2 numbers in the table. So again, just start with your patterns. From 2 to 6 is +4. And from 6 to 10 is +4. So I'm going to make a slope fraction. The pattern on the top is the Y pattern, which is 4. And the pattern on the bottom is the X pattern, which is also 4. So my slope fraction, when I type that into my calculator, should just be 1. Because 4 divided by 4 is just 1. Now, sometimes we want to do this same thing and find the slope, but instead of having a pattern in a table, we're going to have to make our own table. Sometimes we need to find the slope between 2 points. So you'll notice that in this problem, we have a point here and we have a point here. In these points, the x number is always the left, and the y number is always the right. Before we find the slope, we're going to turn this into a little table because we know what to do when the points are in a table. So let's just make our lives easy and stick with what we know. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to put these points in the table in an organized way. So the first point will go in the first row of the table, and the second point will go in the second row. That means that I'm going to write the numbers that are in the point next to each other just like they were when they started off. So this first point starts with a 1 and a -4. I'm just going to copy it down. 1 and -4. The next point has a -2 and a 5. Okay, now I'm going to find my patterns. So from 1 to -2 is -3. From -4 to 5 is +9. And my slope fraction should always have the y pattern on the top, which is 9, and the x pattern on the bottom, which is -3. When I type that into my calculator, it should just give me -3 as my simplified answer. And so we could write -3, or if you wanted to make it a fraction, because slopes are usually fractions, you could also write -3/1. Let's practice that a few more times. So for problem number 4, I would make a little table. Now again, the first point is going to be the first row of the table. So the -3 will go here, and the 5 will go here. The second point will be the second row of the table. So the 3 will go here, and the 9 will go here. Then we're going to find our patterns. To go from -3 to +3, we're going up by 6. And to go from 5 to 9, we're going up by 4. So my slope fraction would be the y pattern on the top, which is 4, and the x pattern on the bottom, which is 6. And then I'm going to type that into my calculator, and I get 2/3. Let's try one more, just to make sure we've really got it. First, we're going to make a little mini table. So I'm going to put the 7 and the -4 next to each other, just like they're next to each other in this point. And I'm going to put the 8 and the 5 next to each other, just like they're next to each other in the point. My x pattern is that I'm going up by 1, and my y pattern is that I'm going up by 9. So my slope fraction is this. The y pattern is 9, and the x pattern is 1. And then I would type that into my calculator, and it would give me 9. Or if I wanted to write that as a fraction, I could write 9/1. Either way is fine. All right, that's it for this lesson. Thank you so much for learning about slope from a table and slope when we have to make our own table. And please try your practice problems next.